As I scrolled through the internet, I encountered a disturbing live stream titled Live Torture of a Delicate Little Flower. Surprisingly, the accompanying photo depicted me. Yet, I am far from a delicate flower. I am a seasoned serial killer. In our building resides a delicate flower, strikingly beautiful and currently a university student. I have long monitored her simple, predictable daily routine, departing for school at 8 each morning and returning at night. Having mercilessly slaughtered 8 girls, I've never before found such exquisite prey. The thrill is palpable. I've slaughtered her best friend, decapitating her as a grotesque gift to the delicate flower, anticipating her horrified reaction with a sinister chuckle. Additionally, I recorded her friend's demise for collective viewing. The video revealed my friend bound to a chair, her hair unkempt, emitting fearful sobs. Suddenly, a figure donning a rabbit mask loomed into view, leisurely circling her, reveling in her palpable dread. Without haste, he sliced through her throat, unleashing a torrent of blood. The video signed off with a macabre note, "A gift? Do you like it?" I furrowed my brow, gazing at the photo of my friend mounted on the wall, a wave of indignation rising within me. How dare he? He had eliminated my intended target prematurely, and in such a brutal fashion. I had meticulously planned to sever my friend's legs first, methodically extract her fingers one by one, and ultimately gouge out her eyes. The post rapidly climbed to the forefront of the forum, garnering hundreds of comments and rewards. Absolutely thrilling. Does the OP know the little flower? Make sure to capture the little flower's reaction to the gift. How do you plan to torture the little flower?
I'm thoroughly exhilarated.
I'm eagerly awaiting the next update. Hurry. Just then, a heavy knock resonated at the door. I moved towards it and peered through the peephole. There stood my friend. The face of my long-deceased friend was eerily pressed against the peephole, his gaze piercing through me. Bang! In that moment, I understood the noise wasn't the sound of knocking. It was the horrific echo of my friend's head thudding against the door repeatedly. I opened the door. There hung my friend's head, suspended from a hook by a rope, swaying grotesquely with each gust of wind. I clicked my tongue in disgust. The incision was crudely made, devoid of any finesse. Yet, I managed to muster a horrified expression and unleashed a piercing scream. My scream had alarmed the neighbor next door. He appeared, his complexion turning ashen at the sight of my friend's head. Are you okay? We need to call the police." "Yes, that's right." His hands shook as he fumbled for his phone, intent on calling the authorities. I couldn't let him make that call, so I hastily adopted a guise of fragility and collapsed against him. "Brother Joe, we can't alert the police." My voice trembled slightly, my eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Why not?" Jose asked, bewildered. The truth was my basement harbored a gruesome collection of my victim's organs. "Brother Joe, there's a live murder stream online, and disturbingly, my photo is on it. I fear the killer might be close by. If we alert the police, he will undoubtedly come for us immediately." I resembled a terrified little rabbit. After a moment's contemplation, Jose acquiesced to my plea. Then, leaning closer, he queried, "What do you think the killer looks like? Could he, perhaps, bear a resemblance to me?" His smile widened slowly. "What do you mean, Brother Joe? Are you suggesting the killer might be as handsome as you?" I managed to project just the right mix of tension and fear. Yet, inwardly, I harbored a chilling suspicion. Could the real psychopath be Jose? Jose offered an embarrassed explanation. "No, I just saw how terrified you looked and made a joke." I nodded sorrowfully, secretly praying he was not the madman. Even though Jose was my subsequent target, and I had initially planned to confine him in an oven, if he were the psychopath, I'd need to concoct a far more sinister method to torment him. Perhaps thrusting his hands into a meat grinder would suffice. Imagining Jose's painful cries, I struggled to suppress the grin threatening to spread across my face. Jose inquired, "If we're not alerting the police, how should we deal with this head?" I suggested with a tremulous voice. Perhaps we could just throw it off the building. It's bound to be found, and someone will alert the authorities. Jose considered for a moment, then concurred that my proposal was sound. Together, we discarded my friend's head among the trash below our building. Her eyes were wide open, staring accusingly at me, as if to challenge my motives. Feigning tears, I turned away, only to catch Jose observing me with an intense, unyielding gaze. His eyes, narrow and eerily pale, held an unnerving intensity as he watched me unblinkingly. Jose smiled slightly. Jiangning, I've had my suspicions from the start. You've displayed great fear, yet you consistently avoided calling the police. Initially, that was understandable, but now, wouldn't calling the police be the most prudent choice? He closed the distance deliberately, finally stopping mere inches from me, his gaze bearing down upon me. Jiangning, what have you been concealing all this time? If I find any part of your answer unsatisfactory, I'll immediately call the police. Jose waved his mobile phone as he spoke. Silently, I cursed all of Jose's ancestors. I had nearly forgotten that my neighbor was a psychologist. Lowering my head, when I raised it again, my eyes overflowed with tears of injustice. Brother Zhou, I never intended to tell you, but my father left behind a mountain of debt and has vanished. The debt collectors harass me often, threatening to expose me at my university if I don't settle the debts soon. In desperation, I resorted to that kind of business, which is why I cannot involve the police. Brother Zhou, I've used all the money to pay off my father's debts. Once they're cleared, I promise never to return to such ways. Won't you hold this against me? By the end of my statement, I was sobbing uncontrollably, all while covertly observing Jose. Predictably, Jose's expression hardened significantly. He seemed about to comfort me with a pat on the head, but ultimately, with a heavy sigh, he refrained. Jiangning, I don't think any less of you. From now on, should you ever feel threatened, come to me at once. I will protect you, Jose stated with gravity. I sniffled, nodding my agreement. Upon my return home, I noticed the murder livestream post had been updated. Apologies for the brief delay. I had some matters to attend to. Thank you for your patience. The gift has now been delivered to the little flower. I've also captured the reaction you all were eager to see from the little flower. I saw the little flower in tears. She was indeed endearing. I nearly lost control and almost killed her right there, but I managed to hold back. After all, the finest meals should be savored slowly, correct? As I scrolled down, I came across a photo of me finding the head. The shot's angle was peculiar. It was taken from behind, seemingly from a low upward angle. This indicated that the photographer was inside my house at that moment. I quickly spun around. The shadowy area under the bed could indeed conceal a person. I seized a fruit knife, slipped it into my sleeve, and hummed a tune cheerfully as I neared the bed.
I bent over abruptly.
Yet, there was no one under the bed. Only a camera rested quietly there. I pulled out the camera. Affixed to it was a pink heart-shaped sticky note. The note read, "The first surprise? Do you like it?" The camera had been set to automatically take photos, which is how it had snapped my image. I furiously smashed the camera to bits. This unsettling feeling was new to me. Always the puppeteer, it was jarring to find myself as the puppet. When had that maniac managed to infiltrate my home undetected? Then came a knock at the door. I opened it, my expression stormy. There stood my naive, wealthy boyfriend. Ning Ning, I've missed you terribly. He enveloped me in an eager embrace. Internally, I recoiled, yet a faint blush tinged my cheeks. Honey, what brought you here so suddenly? I had chosen to date this affluent yet intellectually lacking man for two reasons. Firstly, I needed funding for my assortment of murder tools. Secondly, it simplified the process of planning his demise. Indeed, he too was marked as my quarry. The Iron Maiden in my basement had been tailored for his eventual end. As he was removing his coat to get closer, he suddenly turned ashen. Ning Ning, something's not right. I think something I ate is disagreeing with me. I need to use the bathroom. He scampered off to the bathroom. A wave of panic washed over me internally. The bathtub housed the fresh corpse from last night, only partially dismembered. It appeared I'd have to hasten his end. A thrill of excitement flickered across my lips as I braced for his scream of horror. I waited a full minute, but the bathroom remained eerily quiet. I frowned. Could it be that my boyfriend hadn't pulled back the shower curtain? That seemed unlikely. When I was dismembering yesterday, I hadn't controlled my strength, and the curtain had ended up splattered with blood. If his sense of smell wasn't impaired, he should have noticed the strong, metallic scent of blood. Or had he already found out and was now quivering in fear inside the bathroom? The thought amused me and I chuckled softly. Just then, as I approached the bathroom with the knife, my boyfriend's phone vibrated twice in his pocket. I took out his phone, about to shut it off, when I noticed a familiar sight displayed on the screen. Wasn't this the external forum where I'd stumbled upon that live streaming post? Glancing towards the bathroom, suspicion crept into my mind. I opened the app and confirmed that my boyfriend did indeed have an account on this forum. His browsing history showed that he had viewed the murder live stream post 15 minutes ago. A grim smile spread across my face. Fascinating. My boyfriend wasn't as guileless and sweet as he appeared. I tapped into the live stream post. It had been updated just a minute earlier. I guess the little flower has already discovered the surprise I left under her bed by now. I'm eager to see her reaction, Nevertheless, I've prepared a second surprise for her, hoping it will delight her. Don't hurry me about why I haven't yet dispatched the innocent flower. I will address this query just once. Recall the childhood pleasure of saving the most delectable morsel for last, then consuming it in one glorious bite. Incidentally, has anyone wondered if I'm acquainted with the innocent flower? You've guessed correctly, I do know her. Upon reading these words, my pupils narrowed ever so slightly. This madman, he is unmistakably someone I recognize. At this moment, my supposed boyfriend emerges as the primary suspect. He must have already noticed the corpse in the bathtub. With a light heart, I flung my phone aside and strode toward the bathroom. As I walked, my mind spun with dark thoughts of how best to torment him. Should I drench his flesh with boiling water, peeling it away layer by agonizing layer, or slowly strip away his skin? I tested the bathroom doorknob. It was unlocked. Could he be so arrogantly confident that he could handle me? A wry smile played on my lips. My naive boyfriend truly underestimated me. Though slight in build compared to other women, I've been rigorously trained in physical disciplines since childhood. Handling 3 or 4 grown men was a mere trifle to me. I nudged the bathroom door open. In an instant, my smirk solidified into a mask of surprise. My boyfriend sat on the toilet, pants not yet fully adjusted, his eyes wide with panic. The bathroom was pervaded by a noxious stench. Ning, ning, ning. Why are you wielding that knife? It's just a bit smelly because I'm using the toilet. You're not going to kill your husband over this, are you? He eyed the knife in my hands, swallowing nervously. With a frown, I stepped into the bathroom and flung the shower curtain aside. The blood and the corpse were gone. At the bottom of the bathtub, written in fresh blood, was the second surprise. Fury overwhelmed me. This madman had not only brazenly spied on me but had also stolen my trophy. I hadn't disposed of the female corpse because I wanted her beautiful white teeth. I had planned to extract them one by one, to be preserved in a jar and stored in my basement. Now everything had vanished. I spun around, my glare piercing through my boyfriend who had just managed to pull up his trousers. Perhaps recognizing the clear murderous intent in my gaze, he quivered and asked, "Ning Ning, what's the matter? Is it that time of the month?" I sneered in fury. "Song Yang, you're the one behind the posts, aren't you?" I casually tapped the tip of the knife with my finger, speaking slowly. Song Yang looked back at me in complete bewilderment. "What post? What are you talking about?" His expression didn't betray any pretense. With an inward sneer, I walked directly to the living room, picked up the phone, and tossed it at him. "This is your phone, isn't it?" Song Yang nodded, but his face soon twisted with confusion. "This phone is the same model as mine, but it certainly isn't mine. How peculiar. Then where's my phone? Damn it. Someone swapped my phone. Song Yang grumbled in annoyance. I quietly observed Song Yang's unfolding drama. I remember now when I arrived at your place, I bumped into a man. It must have been him who switched our phones. I can't let this go. I need to confront him. Song Yang surged to his feet, determined to seek out the man. But why would I let him seize that chance? Softly, I called his name. Song Yang turned around. But in that instant, his face morphed from disbelief to utter shock. Song Yang clutched his neck. Blood streamed through his fingers. His hand was in his pocket, presumably reaching for a weapon. I smiled and drove the knife deep into his palm. Song Yang emitted a gut-wrenching scream. His towering frame crashed to the ground, his eyes locked on me. Song Yang's gaze was a maelstrom of incomprehensible emotions, but notably devoid of any hatred. I crouched before him, a flicker of confusion in my eyes, as I withdrew the knife buried in his hand. Hiss! Song Yang's face was ghostly pale, drained by pain and profound blood loss. His lips shivered relentlessly, a sign of his swiftly declining body temperature. Song Yang was on the brink of death. He differed from the others I had dispatched. Before their end, many succumbed to the pain, involuntarily soiling themselves. Some would shiver with fear, others would hurl curses with venom. But Song Yang did none of these. Instead, he regarded me with a calm that was uncharacteristic of him. My brow furrowed. For reasons unknown, a deep unease had settled over me. I craved the sound of his screams. I wished for him to endure extreme pain before his demise. Reaching into his pocket, I expected to find a weapon. Instead, I pulled out a small box, exquisitely wrapped in red velvet. Song Yang mustered a feeble smile. He summoned all his remaining strength, beckoning me closer. It seemed he had something urgent to tell me, but his voice was too soft. I couldn't make out a word. Normally, I generously fulfill the dying wishes of my victims. I leaned in closer, intent on hearing his final words. Unexpectedly, something wet touched my forehead. Song Yang tenderly kissed my forehead.
Ning Ning. I'm dying.
The diamond ring in that box was my intended proposal gift, and that cell phone truly isn't mine. But I have indeed kept some things from you.
Ning Ning.
I so dearly wish to be the one to change your life, to stay with you until the very end, to marry you and have children. Song Yang's gaze slowly blurred. Finally, his pupils expanded to their utmost, and his head slumped weakly onto my shoulder. With a cold expression, I pushed his head away. A badge fell from his other pocket. I picked it up, shocked. It was a police badge. Song Yang was not the unhinged poster online. He was a police officer. Without a trace of emotion, I opened the diamond ring box. The diamond ring in the box gleamed radiantly. A whopping 10 carats. Classic foolish extravagance of a rich second-generation heir. A small note was also tucked inside.
Ning Ning forkive miitetseit.
I am a police officer. I approached you suspecting your involvement in several serial killings, but I made a devastating mistake. I fell in love with you. I wished to change you, to obliterate the evidence against you, to build a life together. With detachment, I threw the ring box into the trash. Poor, love-struck fool, you're no cop, but an idiot. However, you managed one thing well. You did deceive me, I murmured, staring at Song Yang's body. But inexplicably, a peculiar feeling stirred in my heart. A tightening, a pang of pain, a trace of sorrow. Tears unknowingly escaped my eyes. I swiftly wiped them away and hauled Song Yang's body into the basement. His body rolled down the stairs, settling on the floor. His eyes seemed to fix on me persistently. I retrieved the cell phone I'd found in Song Yang's coat earlier. At that moment, the phone vibrated. I opened WeChat. There was just one message from an account with no profile picture. The third surprise. A surge of fury welled up in my heart. I gripped the cell phone fiercely. Indeed, this maniac, time and again disrupting my meticulous plans, making a puppet of me. He intentionally switched Song Yang's phone to lead me to believe that Song Yang was the poster. This maniac also knew me too well. He understood that I would rather err and kill than let Song Yang go unchallenged. Every step I took played right into his scheme. He undoubtedly knew of Song Yang's true identity as a police officer. I bit my lip, my mood sinking to its lowest. For the first time, I experienced an unsettling loss of control. It was a deeply unpleasant sensation. I revisited the live stream post. Sure enough, there was an update. I forgot to mention earlier, our innocent girl has a boyfriend, but I'm not troubled by any purity complexes. So I have no qualms about the girl, though her boyfriend definitely had to be removed. I'm not fond of killing men. Nothing against them, just a personal quirk. So I devised another method to eliminate her boyfriend. Curious about the specifics? Sorry, I must keep that confidential for now. Now that her boyfriend is dead, the innocent girl is solely mine. Suddenly, the comments have surged. Am I on the verge of fame? Thanks to everyone who refrained from calling the police. Trust me to craft a perfect conclusion for all. Some comments have asked, knowing me, didn't the innocent girl ever suspect anything? Well, here's a secret. We've known each other a long time, but she doesn't recall any of our past. I can't divulge more on this. I risk revealing too much. As for why the innocent girl didn't call the police herself, it's because I unearthed her secret. That's all for now. I'm off to prepare the fourth and fifth surprises for her. My expression turned exceedingly grim. Indeed, my killing of Song Yang had been perfectly predicted by him. I remembered Song Yang saying he had collided with a man on his way upstairs. Could that man have been Jose? Considering his profound understanding of my mind, it likely was Jose, the psychologist. I clenched my fists, a sinister look in my eyes. I checked every nook and cranny of the room but found no cameras. Driven by immense frustration, I went down to the basement to attend to Song Yang's body. In the basement, a woman was tied to a chair. One of her hands was broken, just hanging limply. Her toes were mangled beyond recognition. One of the woman's eyes was gruesomely disfigured, the other filled with loathing as it caught sight of me. She was a previous target of mine. Notably beautiful, she was rumored to be a low-tier celebrity. Given my fixation on aesthetics, I had preserved her for my twisted games. But upon approaching and seeing her hair, I halted in shock. My initial intent had been to scalp her, preserving her hair as part of my collection. Yet now, her once beautiful, flowing hair had been shorn off, leaving nothing but a buzz cut. A heart-shaped sticky note was still pasted across her chest. The fourth surprise. I've appropriated your prized collection. My chest surged with rage. Who is it? Who sheared your hair? It appeared to be the first time she had witnessed such fury in me. Caught off guard for a moment, she then chuckled unervingly, her voice harsh and unpleasant. I delivered a forceful slap. Who was it? You must have seen them. She spat a mouthful of blood at me. You monstrous freak. Even if you torture me to death, I will not reveal their name. You're finally getting your comeuppance, and I want you to taste the terror. Despite my relentless torment, she steadfastly refused to name the person. At last, with the woman barely alive, I left the basement utterly spent. After emerging from the basement, I lit a cigarette and drew in a deep breath. My fingers shook subtly. That woman was right, I was tasting fear. The unsettling feeling of being monitored, controlled, sent shivers down my spine. At that moment, the wail of sirens rang out from downstairs. Shortly after, several police officers were at my door. Clad in a low-cut white lace camisole nightdress, I faced the police with trepidation and timidly inquired, "Officers, what's happened?" A few of the younger officers diverted their eyes. "Ma'am, we received a call. A human head has been discovered in the garbage pile below your apartment." I looked stricken, covered my mouth, and recoiled. How could such a terrifying thing occur? Who could be so monstrous? One officer met my gaze. "Ma'am, the victim was your friend, Xia Susu. You might recognize her." Upon hearing this, my eyes rolled back and I elegantly collapsed into the arms of the police. After over 10 minutes, I slowly came to. Upon awakening, I found myself draped in a man's jacket. But this jacket felt eerily familiar. Raising my eyes, I met José's concerned gaze. Jiang Ning, are you all right? Officer. Ms. Jiang Ning, you were lucky that Mr. José was here in time to perform CPR on you. I felt as if I had swallowed 10,000 flies. Despite this, I managed to look gratefully at José through my tears. José, embarrassed, quickly looked away. Officer. Ms. Jiang Ning, was Xia Susu known to have conflicts with anyone? His gaze sharpened suddenly, cutting like a knife. I dabbed at the tears at the corner of my eyes and shook my head in sorrow. Susu was kind, incredibly vivacious. Yet internally I scoffed. That's not true. Xia Susu was a manipulator. She was very empathetic, always concerned about me. That too was a lie. She had a talent for seducing my boyfriend. I can't fathom anyone being so heartless as to murder her. Really? Ms. Jiang Ning? Are you certain you're telling us everything? The officer's piercing gaze fixed on me. My hands, trembling with fear, clutched at my sleeves. I looked to José for reassurance. José gently patted my hand. Encouragingly, Jiang Ning, just be honest with the police. All will be well. I nodded. I've told nothing but the truth. Officer. We cracked Xia Susu's phone and found that her last message was sent to you. I quickly asked, what did Susu say? The officer's gaze grew ominously deep. She begged you not to kill her and claimed she had discovered the basement's secret. At that moment, the looks from the officers felt like daggers thrusting towards me. Ms. Jiang Ning, we need to search your basement. My expression tightened. I remained silent, overwhelmed with anxiety. My palms were slick with cold sweat.
José noticed my unease.
Jiang Ning, it's okay. Let's cooperate with the officers. Cooperate as if. I clenched my jaw in frustration. Officer. Ms. Jiang Ning? If you're unwilling to cooperate, we'll proceed with a forced search. You're mistaken. I'm just shocked. I don't understand why Susu would say that. I'm more than willing to cooperate. I stood and personally opened the basement door. Yet inside I was in turmoil. This is it, I'm doomed. My mind scrambled for any possible escape, like eliminating everyone present. José would be manageable, but the officers, they're armed. Even if I could take out one, I'd likely be shot. Damn it, what should I do? Is this where my life ends? As the officers descended into the basement, one murmured to another, there's a thick smell of blood here. My heart pounded furiously. In the chaos, someone grasped my hand. It was José. His expression, shadowed by the dim lighting, was grave. You're very nervous. Your hands are drenched in sweat. Jiang Ning, what's making you so anxious? He whispered quietly. It's none of your business. My anxiety surged. However, the next moment, shock replaced my anxiety. The woman from the basement, along with Song Yang's body, had disappeared. All of my collected human relics were gone. The only item remaining was the Iron Maiden I had created for Song Yang. In that instant, my mind was blank, my heart racing uncontrollably. The police scanned the area and finally stood before the Iron Maiden. Ms. Jiang Ning, what is this? It was a gift from my ex-boyfriend. It always terrified me, so I kept it in the basement, I replied, trying to sound composed. The officers exchanged looks and opened the Iron Maiden. A vile stench of decay and blood emerged. Inside was a dead lamb, heavily mutilated. Their expressions shifted. They glanced at me, a flicker of sympathy in their eyes. Ms. Jiang Ning, your boyfriend was indeed a vile man. If you'd like to make a report, we're ready to assist. A note was placed on the lamb. The fifth surprise. No need anymore, he won't be bothering me again. I glanced back to see José standing in the shadows, his smile barely visible. After the police had left, I sat on the sofa, visibly shaken. José handed me a glass of lemon water. Jiang Ning, remember? You can always turn to me for help. That live-streaming murder post you spoke of earlier had me worried. Have you faced any danger? José sat next to me, looking concerned. I lifted my eyes to him, tears nearly spilling over. Brother Zhou, I think I might really be sick. I dreamed I was a serial killer, slaughtering many and even abducting a young celebrity. I can't distinguish between my dreams and reality anymore. What should I do, Brother Zhou? Do I have an antisocial personality disorder?
Zhou laughed softly.
He affectionately patted my head and spoke in a gentle, measured tone. What are you thinking, my dear? How can you confuse dreams with reality? I've known you as a neighbor for so long, and you've always struck me as exceptionally kind. Well, I'll be off now. If you need anything, just call me, and I'll be here in no time. With that, Jose stood and departed. I watched his departing figure, my gaze becoming intensely thoughtful. I revisited the livestream post. Predictably, it had been updated. Hello, everyone. I'm back with an update. Indeed, the fifth surprise thoroughly terrified the innocent girl. Truthfully, I find her genuine fear far more captivating than any pretense. The crowd is clamoring for the end of the innocent girl, and it feels like the right time. I've resolved to act tonight. I'll capture the torture on video for all to enjoy. I've considered all your torture suggestions, impaling, dismemberment, boiling alive, but found them lacking. Fear not, I'll ensure she experiences the most agonizing death possible. I let out a sinister chuckle. He plans to torture me tonight? Perfect. The predatory instinct within me stirred anew. I licked my lips, eyeing the lemon water on the table. Fool. Whether you're the one posting or not, did you really think I'd mindlessly drink something you prepared? I lifted the lemon water and poured it into the sink. But almost immediately, I felt a wave of dizziness sweep over me. What is this? I tried to stabilize myself on the sink, but my strength failed, and I crumpled to the floor. Darkness gradually overtook my vision. Just before slipping into unconsciousness, I noticed the doorknob of the front door creak slightly and turn. The door swung open. I awoke. I found myself in the basement of my own house, my hands and feet securely bound with ropes. I struggled briefly but found myself completely powerless.
Yang Ning.
The voice was familiar. The man smiling broadly in front of me was Jose. I returned his smile. Brother Zhou, you didn't spike the lemonade, did you? You applied it to the glass, I observed calmly. Jiang Ning, indeed you are the prey I've been watching. You're exceedingly astute, Jose commended. Why do you want to kill me? I questioned, my curiosity piqued. Jose stepped forward and caressed my cheek gently. His hand was deathly cold, like a serpent methodically making its way across my face. The moment I first laid eyes on you, I recognized our kinship. Ning Ning, do you ever require a reason to select your prey? Of course not. Our choices are guided by instinct. I have never before met prey such as you. The thrill of a lion killing another lion far exceeds that of taking down a rabbit. You may not remember, but our acquaintance stretches far back. You are my finest creation, and I have awaited this moment to finally reap my efforts. He nuzzled my neck affectionately, his voice as gentle as a lover's. Ning Ning, our actual first meeting was in the correctional facility when you were merely 15. Naturally, you wouldn't remember that now. I locked eyes with him, a cold sneer curling in my heart. No, I hadn't forgotten. How could I ever erase such a monstrous figure from my memory? All the memories ignited within me, bursting like fireworks in the storm of my thoughts. My initial encounter with Jose was not as neighbors but in a starkly different role. At that time, I was a teenage murderer, and he was the psychologist tasked with treating me. 5 years earlier, at 15, a time when most girls relish their sweetest years, I was infamous as a child murderer. I had killed 15 children, the youngest only 5 years old. On the day I received a life sentence, I was whisked away to a juvenile detention center. I was to remain there until adulthood before being transferred to another prison. As I was escorted out of the courthouse, a sea of people unleashed their fury upon me. Eggs, spit, and even knives were hurled in my direction. Their actions were justified. After all, I was a despicable murderer. Though bathed in sunlight, I felt as though I stood in a profound abyss. Amidst the angry crowd, One person smiled, a smile that pierced the chaos. It was my father, my adoptive father. Our eyes locked. Silently, he shaped 3 words with his lips. My dear daughter. Thus began my time in the correctional facility. Yet deep down, I knew the truth. Those 15 lives, those 15 children, I hadn't taken any of them. Ever since I was little, I had felt there was something deeply wrong with my father. The basement of our house often echoed with children's cries and screams. My father rigidly kept it off limits, always locking it. He raised me with strict discipline. Even though I was a girl, he subjected me to rigorous physical training from a young age. He never spared me. I sometimes endured beatings so severe that I would spit blood and spend a week bedridden. Yet, I never harbored hatred towards him. He was my father, my only family. All I wished for was less time for him in that basement and more time with me. I always obeyed my father. Even when I could hear children's screams and cries for help from the basement, I pretended they didn't exist. Those sounds haunted my dreams and tortured me into sleepless nights. Then, at 12, my father finally permitted me to enter the basement. He gave me a tender smile, the first ever, and as he caressed my head, he said I could start helping him. I was overjoyed. I could finally assist my father. He unlocked the basement door, but I did not know that with the opening of that door, my life would be utterly ruined. The first time I descended into the basement, I was overwhelmed by nausea and vomited helplessly on the floor. The shelves were stocked with rows of human organs, ears, eyes, viscera, hair. My father proudly declared that these were his collections, gathered over many years. On the operating table, a boy with bound limbs trembled. His eyes, filled with tears of terror, met ours. My father urged me to observe his performance closely. What ensued was a scene of unimaginable horror. I covered my ears as my father performed a live dissection on the boy. The boy's agonizing screams tore through me, slicing my heart with knife-like precision. Tears streaming, I begged my father to stop. He gave me a cold look and then thrust the scalpel deep into my abdomen. When I regained consciousness, my abdomen was bandaged and the boy on the table had been reduced to disjointed organs. Breathing heavily in his excitement, my father stated, "From now on, you'll clean up after my kills. Don't think about resisting. I am your father. I brought you into this world. You owe me your obedience. And don't even think about escaping. If I detect any betrayal, I will surely kill you." And so, I became the cleaner of my father's gruesome scenes. I had thought about escaping, about helping those children. But every time my father captured me and brought me back, beaten to near death, the children suffered even more horrific fates. To better facilitate his murders, he masqueraded as a kind, ordinary father. He sent me to school with a gentlemanly smile, urging me, "Ning Ning, be sure to bring some good friends home." I had hoped school would be my sanctuary. Instead, it became another chasm of despair. I was tormented, ridiculed, and physically assaulted. They engraved words into my skin and forced me to swallow sewage from the toilets. The class leader, a strikingly beautiful girl, scorned me and drew bloody lines across my face with her sharp nails. "Jiang Ning, looking like that, who are you trying to entice?" I considered retaliating. My physical strength was more than enough to kill them. Yet, the mere thought of my father's face rendered me utterly incapable of resistance. On my birthday, despite my desperate entreaties, my father invited them to our house. They arrived, filled with venom. In the end, their lives were snuffed out by that very venom. Everyone was killed. I too lost consciousness. When my eyes fluttered open, I found myself in handcuffs. The police informed me that all the pivotal evidence pointed directly at me. Each of the murder weapons bore my fingerprints. I watched as my father, his eyes tinged with red, told the police, "It's my failing for not caring adequately for Ning Ning." I was oblivious to the extent of bullying she endured, bullying so severe it spawned significant psychological issues. The phrases from my diary, the repeated scribbles of, "I really want to kill them," emerged as damning evidence. My life, just as it was beginning to blossom, was cast into the deepest abyss. I was branded the most monstrous, the most inhumane juvenile murderer. A week after being locked away, my father visited. He greeted me with a smile. "Ning Ning, how are you finding life inside?" I responded with numb detachment. He continued, "There's something I've concealed from you for too long, and today feels right to confess. I am not your real father." My eyes slightly widened. He laughed cruelly. "I murdered your parents when you were 2 and took you, a toddler who knew nothing. Admittedly, I felt a twinge of guilt every time you called me Dad." In the next instant, my screams of agony resonated through the prison. Chapter 14, Epilogue: The Hunter. I resolved to take vengeance. The prison assigned me a psychologist named Jose. When our eyes met for the first time, I smiled. I knew my moment had come. Living for years under the same roof as my foster father, a seasoned psychopath, had finally tuned my intuition to surpass that of ordinary people. At first glance, I recognized Jose as a man of the same ilk as my father. Both thrived under the guise of normalcy, their malevolence hidden behind disarming smiles. This time, I was intent on slowly unraveling the facade of these demons. Assuming the guise of a wayward lamb, I confided in Jose about every ordeal, every misfortune. Jose reveled in my trust and honesty. Patting my head, he declared, "Jiang Ning, I will be your savior." He initiated a regimen of psychological suggestion and hypnosis. Jose persistently implanted the notion that killing was a justifiable act. Several times, I nearly succumbed to his hypnotic inductions. He didn't realize that each time he left, I bit down on my own flesh until I bled. After 6 months of psychological manipulation, Jose thought he had molded me. "Jiang Ning, you will become my most flawless creation. Tonight, I will aid your escape, but from this moment on, you will erase all memories of me. When the time is right, I will come for you, to reap my ultimate masterpiece."
Jose hypnotized me.
He successfully orchestrated my escape. Unbeknownst to him, during those 6 months of therapy, I too had become adept at self-suggestion and hypnosis. I effectively resisted his attempts to hypnotize me. His face would be etched in my memory forever. His name, too, I would never forget. A week after my escape, I sought out my foster father. I went to his home. He had a new wife and children. He appeared immensely happy. How could he find such happiness after he had shattered my life? So I bound him in the basement. Yes, that very basement where he had committed his murders. My foster father stared at me in terror, resembling those children he had murdered. "Ning Ning, please don't kill Daddy, okay? Daddy is sorry, Daddy was wrong." I severed his first finger. My foster father's screams tore through the silence. I cut off his second finger. "What do you expect from me?" he cried out in agony. "I want you to confess to what really happened," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. My foster father let out a cold laugh. "I don't know what you're talking about." I snipped off his third finger. He collapsed from the pain. Yet he still refused to confess. I knew a psychopath's endurance far exceeded that of an ordinary person. That was when I brought in his son. His eyes blazed with rage as he shouted at me, "No, you cannot harm him." I stared blankly at him in that moment. It seemed that even this heartless monster had a soft spot. Eventually, my foster father, in front of the camera, admitted to his heinous acts. He was arrested and received the death sentence. I was cleared of all charges. Many expressed their apologies to me, and several families wanted to adopt me. However, I turned them all down. I knew I couldn't risk their safety. A figure more sinister than my foster father was still lurking. Knowing I couldn't face this alone, I reached out to the police officer who had sent me to the detention center. His name was Song Yang, recently graduated from the police academy. Song Yang was deeply apologetic and promised to meet any request I had. So I asked him for help. Chapter 16, Epilogue: The Hunt. My thoughts snapped back to the present. I faced Jose with absolute calm. To stay so composed at this moment, "You truly are the most perfect creation I've ever made." Jose sighed proudly. But in the next instant, The cold barrel of a gun was pressed against the back of his head. The smile vanished from Zhou Zei's face. He turned, and upon seeing Song Yang, his pupils constricted. How could you possibly be alive? Song Yang grinned. Idiot. Bet you didn't see that coming, did you? The basement door flew open. A swarm of police officers poured in. One female officer, her expression filled with empathy, quickly released me from my binds and softly inquired, Ning Ning, does it hurt? This was the same woman whom I had earlier confined in the basement, now unmarred, her face and hands intact. I gently shook my head and, with a reassuring smile, told her it didn't hurt. Zhou Zei's face clouded over with darkness. After a fleeting look at the female officer, his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that grew until he burst into knowing laughter. Jiang Ning, so you've known all along, haven't you? You never truly forgot me, and my insidious influence to compel you to kill never succeeded. From the moment of your release, revenge was your sole pursuit. You played the part of a deranged sociopath at my behest. But in reality, you never spilled blood, did you? I smiled faintly and affirmed, your guess is spot on. Right from the start, I worked in concert with the police to spin a meticulous web for Zhou Zei. Patiently, I watched as Zhou Zei, the moth, unwittingly fluttered deeper into our trap, until escape was beyond his reach. I was conscious of Zhou Zei's watchful eyes on me. To utterly secure his trust, a female officer willingly played the role of my victim. The wounds marring her face and body were the artistry of a special effects makeup artist. The organs arrayed on the shelves, too, were merely on loan from a hospital. Song Yang was not my victim but my co-actor in a flawlessly executed drama. I stepped toward Zhou Zei, seeing fear surface in his eyes for the first time. Brother Zhou, are you scared now? I asked, my tone teasing yet light. Zhou Zei closed his eyes and fell silent, his body quivering slightly, revealing his inner turmoil. The intricate web had finally drawn tight, ensnaring its prey at last. Devils draw humans with beauty. Angels repel devils with their daunting aura. A week later, Zhou Zei was condemned to death for the murders of 8 women. On the day he was led to his execution, I was at home, packing up. I was preparing to leave this place behind and embark on a new chapter. Suddenly, the doorbell chimed. There stood Song Yang, clutching a red box and blushing as he stuttered. This diamond ring is real, Jiang Ning. Does the promise when you called me husband still stand? I paused, then laughed warmly. That will depend on your actions. Under the sun, their shadows merged, forming a single silhouette.